Hey there neighbors, Kevin here with etrailer, and today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the etrailer self-adjusting trailer brake assemblies here on our 2017 Starcraft Travel Star Galaxy fifth wheel trailer. So our neighbor came to us today and he was wanting to get his brakes replaced because it was time for him. He was getting less braking power and knew that there was something wrong, and was also wanting to just do a quick run through, get his bearings checked, and make sure everything was functioning how it should be with his suspension. So that way he knows he's nice and safe to take his family out with his camper. So that's where we started taking everything apart, got in here, saw that the brakes were indeed in need of replacement, and not only that, but also his hubs as well. So typically when you are replacing your trailer brakes, you will reuse that hub as long as it's in good shape. But if you go by manufacturer standards, you should be replacing that every single time, because you want the brake shoes to be wearing in correctly into that hub. You don't want to have it already worn a little bit weird or wonky from an older brake assembly and then it not make good contact with the new assembly that you're getting. So if you want to, you can go ahead and swap all the stuff out, but if not, if you're just going to try and reuse your hub, just make sure that you don't have any deep gouges or scratches into the face of it or along where the brake shoes rides, just so that you're getting that good contact and making sure everything's perfect. So with that being said, replacing your trailer brakes is honestly one of the easiest things to do when it comes to trailers. Just removing your assembly is kind of dirty just because there's grease involved, but aside from that, once you have that all off and you wipe down your spindle, you just got 4 bolts that you're going to need to take the nuts off of, pop your old assembly out, pop on the new assembly, and you're all good to go. So this is something that you can easily do yourself, but it is a little bit time consuming because there is a little bit of prep work. As you can see, we have a lift right behind us with an I-beam holding up our trailer by the frame, because you are going to need to let your suspension hang. I've also stuck a couple of jacks under the axle tube, because what will happen a lot of time as the weight starts shifting back and forth when you're messing with stuff on the suspension, the equalizers and shackle straps will start moving on you. The shackle straps will drop down. Your whole axle will drop down on you just because of that. So throwing some bottle jacks, floor jacks, something like that under there can kind of help lift them back up, keep everything where it needs to sit. So that way it's a little bit easier. It's not starting to twist on you or dropping too low to where you can't get the wheel back on later on. So just make sure that you're doing the proper planning beforehand, have all the stuff you need. Definitely some shop towels, make sure you have your PPE, so glasses, gloves, make sure you're staying safe while you are replacing this. But if this is something where you just don't have the time, the space, or the tools to do so, definitely feel free to use our dealer locator. You can enter in your zip code to find a shop near you and get it professionally installed. If you are willing to do this yourself, then stick around and I'll help walk you through the process. To start off our installation, we're going to first need to remove our hub and drum assembly. Now, this was a trailer that I had already removed this from, so some of the stuff isn't going to be exactly how it would normally be if you first saw it. This trailer's been sitting here for a bit because once we checked each one of our hubs, we noticed that the spindle on our rear axle was completely beyond saving. So at that point we had to stop, get a new axle ordered, get that shipped over to us, and we have that in place now. So now we can finally get back to actually doing what our neighbor came in for. So you're not going to see a lot of grease in here because I've already wiped it out and I just shoved this back on so that way you guys could see it at home. So we'll take a rubber mallet. We're going to kind of spin around and just tap at almost like a 45-degree angle on our grease cap here. That's going to help us break it free. Now, I do still have a little bit of grease, but for the majority of this, it'll be a lot less than what you should see at home. You should have a lot more grease in there to actually help you and your bearings. All right, once you get the grease cap off, take your cotter pin. You're going to want to straighten that back out. And then we can lift that back up. Sometimes you got to tap it a little bit. And now we're going to be holding on to this. There's a couple of components that aren't going to be coming with the pieces of equipment that we are replacing. So the cotter pin, your castle nut, and then also your spindle washer are going to be important to save here because we will be reusing these with our new assemblies. Now from here, I have a 1.5 inch socket, and we're going to bring our castle nut off enough. Stick in here. And I'm going to spray these out pretty good with some brake clean too. And from here now we can start trying to shift our hub off. And I try to catch the spindle washer in the first outer bearing here, and not have it drop all that lubricant all over. I've got my trash box off to the side. Just pull this out straight off, and you can see I left some of the grease on there, but like I said, for the majority of it I had already wiped it off. I have also clipped the wiring. So on the back side here we're going to have 2 wires, and those run to our brake magnet. It's going to be power and ground, and that's what actually energizes the magnet so that it'll grip onto the face of our hub, which is right here, and that's what pulls the brake arms out, or shoes I should say, pushes those out up against our hub here, and that's what's stopping our trailer. Now when you are doing this, like originally we were really just supposed to be replacing the brakes and then just checking bearings, but what I looked at was our hub. Now this one's not as bad as it was over on the driver's side. There was deep gouges all throughout it, but even this one, I mean, we're getting some pretty good grooves starting to happen, so at that point it's time to replace it, because now our magnet isn't making good contact with our hub, and if we're losing contact, we're losing that magnet connecting here, it's not going to be able to pull the brake shoes as strongly, and then we're not getting that same braking power. So we're going to end up losing all of our braking power if that magnet ends up going out. I'm going to take some shop towels. Good idea to have a whole box of them with you. This is definitely a dirty job every single time. We're going to wipe this down real good, spray it with the brake clean, wipe it one more time. And from there, now we can start removing our brake assembly. Once you got those bolts off and you have your positive and ground cut, you can then pull off your brake assembly. Now when you cut those wires, I try to cut it really close to the back of the brake assembly. That way we have all this extra wiring here if we ever do need it. Anything extra that you don't need, you can always end up zip tying out of the way or cut it off. It's a lot easier to cut more off than it is to add more, so definitely worth saving. Now I did want to go over determining which one is going to be the right fit for you. Easiest way is to definitely just go look at your axle tube. You should have a sticker on there. Now the axle tube sticker can eventually wear off, so you might not be able to solely use that, but typically if that's on there, it's going to tell you what the weight capacity is, and then from there you can easily just pick up a set of brakes just based on that weight capacity. Now there's also a couple other ways if that sticker is gone. So one of the easiest ways is if you already have the hub off, you can then measure the diameter, which in our case it's 10 inches for this assembly, and then our thickness, which would be 2 1/4 for this one. And then that tells us our dimensions of our trailer brake assembly, and then we also list them that way. If you don't have that weight capacity, but you do have the dimensions, you can still look up which one is going to be the right fit. Just double check that the bolt pattern on the back side is going to be the same for your setup, because it's not going to be able to replace the brake flange to make it match up with your brakes. It's a lot easier to just get the right brakes and make sure that you're doing that correctly. Now, one other thing with this too, down below you can see these 2 holes right here. There's caps in them right now. That leads us over to the sprocket right here, which allows us to adjust our brakes. Now in our case, we have self-adjusting brakes, and we are going to stay with that with the new one. You can see it's got this cable right here. That's a good indicator that you have self-adjusting brakes. And what that means is you shouldn't have to ever adjust this. Maybe the initial bedding of the brakes, you might adjust it a little bit, but it's a lot easier to just take your car and tow your truck and tow your trailer with it, and just get up to about 25 miles per hour and then step on the brakes, and it'll keep adjusting itself until the brakes shoes expand enough to actually contact with our hub. Now once you have your correct replacement, in our case today we're going to be going with our eTrailer self-adjusting trailer brake assembly here. We're going to pop that on. Now this is going to come with the studs that are going to actually mount up, but it does not come with the nuts for it. So we offer a kit here which is going to come with some split lock washers along with some nuts that you can use to actually mount that up. In our case, we in the shop have our own hardware too. I've got some 7/16 lock nuts, and I'm going to end up just using those because it's a lot easier and I don't ever have to worry about them backing off. So I'm going to come on the back side, and just like before, Tighten that down, get it nice and snug. Now when you put this on here, definitely make sure that your wiring isn't getting pinched. Sometimes they like to tuck the wiring back up into the main assembly here instead of having it just only run out through the back, which you can see right here. Sometimes you can get it on here, you'll tighten it down, and then it's pinched. So just make sure that you have it sticking out. You don't want to have to undo all those nuts right after you tighten them down. These are side specific. If you look at this one, it's going to say right hand. There's a sticker right here that says it. There's also an imprint on the metal back here where it's stamped and it says RH. They'll also say it on the back side in most cases. Most assemblies are going to tell you it's left or right, but another way you can do that, if all of those stickers are gone or there's no stamps or anything like that, is just look straight up at the brake shoes. You can see that this side is much smaller than this side. So the smaller side is always going to go towards the front of the trailer, and then also if you look at the brake magnet, you can see the arm of it. It's always going to want to have to pull away towards the back of the trailer, so that way it engages when you step on the brakes. So just make sure that you are putting it on the right-hand side when it's the right-hand brake assembly, or left-hand side, which is going to be the driver's side, if it is the left-hand assembly, so that way your brakes actually activate. Because if you had these flip-flopped, the brake magnet is not going to be able to catch right, and it's just going to keep unlatching itself every single time and not actually push the shoes out to make contact with our hub. We just need some 16 to 14 heat shrink butt connectors. That way we can protect our connection point here and not have it corrode. We're just going to strip back our casing. I'm going a little bit more than I need to. I'm going to kind of fold it back on itself. It'll be just a little bit thicker. We're going to push that in. Take our crimps, crimp that down nice and tight. And the polarity on these does not matter. So one can go to one wire from the brake magnet, the other one can go to the other one. It doesn't have to be specific. That down, grab our wiring from our brake assembly. Now they only left you a little bit there. I'm going to snip that off and I'm going to strip back some more casing too. And crimp that down. Same thing with our other wire, and then I'm going to zip tie these up out of the way after heat shrinking them, of course. So grab your heat gun next. So now that we have this side completed, the steps that we're going to take over on our driver's side are going to be exactly the same. So should be a pretty simple process for you to do. Just make sure that you are keeping everything nice and clean. Don't get any grease on your brake shoes, because if you do, it will end up completely ruining them. You don't want any kind of contaminants on there that could potentially prevent our friction from building up between the brake shoe and our hub. Here are our new hubs. We have these from Terran. These are actually a new product for us today at eTrailer. And this is a little bit different because they already pre-grease it, but they use a different grease than what we currently offer. So I am going to have to remove our grease seal to start with. If you at home want to keep this grease, you just want to make sure that you pick up a couple tubes of Mobile XHP 222. That is going to be the correct grease that is used inside of here. They listed a bunch in their instructions. The Terran instructions are beyond amazing. That's one of the things. They have a bunch of pictures. They list out every single thing you need to do for your suspension, way more than what they needed to with just the hub. So definitely check out the owner's manual or instruction manual. It gives you everything you need and a bunch of steps picture by picture, so that way you can make sure that you're installing this correctly. Now in my case today, like I said, I have a different kind of grease. I don't want to mix and match greases. What'll end up happening is the two greases will fight with each other, and eventually they will end up just kind of turning to more of a liquidy water kind of consistency. And then what's going to happen is it's all just going to kind of drip out of our assembly here, and then we're going to have no grease, no lubrication for our bearings, and eventually those bearings are going to end up exploding just from the heat. So what I'm going to be doing is busting out this grease seal. So I'm going to start with that. And what I like to do is use a flathead screwdriver to start with and my mallet. And what I like to do is kind of hammer in one side, and hopefully it'll pop out the other side just a bit. This one, not so much. pop my bearing out of the way. And if that doesn't want to cooperate with you, next step is get yourself a pry bar, and you can start trying to pry it out. Sometimes I like to put my feet up on it though, give myself a little bit more stability. And we can hopefully slowly pop this out without getting grease everywhere. There we go. Now with that out of the way, I'm going to need to get my bearing out. You can easily clean these out. You can use some acetone and soak it overnight and really clean out all the grease. I'm not going to do that today. I'm just going to replace it. Super nice that they pre-grease that for you and put it in there, but like I said, in our case, we just don't have that grease on hand right now. So, take yourself a couple shop towels, wipe it out really good. I'm going to take some brake clean as well. I'm going to spray that in here, really clean this out. Make sure there's absolutely zero grease left over inside of here, because I don't want that contaminating my new grease. So with our bearing packer, we're going to drop this in. We'll have the smaller side of the cone or the closed end down. And we are going to then put some pressure on this. And what I like to do is just kind of work in a circle around it. And here, I'll pull it up. You can kind of already see what I'm talking about. Little bits of it just kind of starting to poke through. And we want to get that good, healthy amount coming through first, and then we'll pull it back out. So here you can see I got a good amount on here, but I got a little bit less on that side. So I'm going to kind of try to work that side a little bit more. There we go. Once we get that, we can then take all this excess and we're just going to rub it all over our bearing. Once you have it greased up, we can then drop it in. I try to be extra careful about it. And then this excess that I have on my hands, I'm going to rub that on the spindle, being careful not to get it onto our brake assembly, because we are going to load this up with some grease. Now from there, all we have to do is reinstall a new grease seal. And what I like to do is just get just the smallest little bit of grease on the edge, so it'll help it slip in just a little bit easier. And then from there, there's actual tools that you could pick up as well that'll help you to hammer this in nice and straight, but we're doing it a little bit different. I have a larger hole saw here. If you get a hole saw that is wider than the bore hole of the hub, it makes it a lot easier to get that nice straight shot right down here, because if you use something a little bit softer, like back in the day I used to use just a 2x4 that was small enough to fit inside of here, and we would hammer that in, and then there'd always be the chance that you hammer in just a little bit too much in one section and it presses the grease seal down, and then now that creates a problem to where grease can still escape out, and then it's going to get all over your brake assembly, and we don't want that to happen because then you're now replacing your brakes. So make sure you got something nice and strong. So the metal from this is going to be more than enough to get it down flush with our hub. And then here is actually one of the handles for a seal punch, but we don't have the other half of it anymore, so I'm just dropping that right into the center of that. And then if I feel here, it's completely flush and we're all good to go. We didn't damage our seal, so hole saw is definitely a champ when it comes to getting your grease seals in. Now with our grease seal in, we can then reinstall our hub. Okay, so as I press on this, it's going to force grease up through our bearing, and you can see I got all these little pockets starting to form of grease. So that's actually exactly how much I want right now. And then all that excess I'm going to take and I'm just going to rub it all over the other edges of our bearing, get it completely coated in grease. And then once we have it all greased up, what I like to do is I'll put my fingers in the center of it, kind of go right on over. If you don't have it perfectly lined up, it will want to kind of fight you. I'm going to wipe off my hands. Definitely a good idea to have a box of shop towels with you when you're doing this. You can typically kind of rock it back and forth till you get it just perfect. And if not, if it is fighting you, you didn't get it on there just perfectly straight, and that's why I said it's super important that you get the perfect measurement on this. You can kind of just pull your hub back out to push it out. Get it right back on. There we go. slipped into place. Wipe that off. Now it's time to grab our spindle washer, and what this is going to do is give it nice even pressure up against our bearing. From there, we can then grab our axle nut, or if you have a castle nut in our case, we're going to run that down, and then we're going to grab our torque wrench, because we will torque this to fully seat the bearing. And what I mean by that is we won't have any kind of side-to-side play. I don't really have much already. It's pretty tight, so that's a good indicator, but definitely important to do it the correct way. Once we torque it, we can then back it off, and we're going to just back it off and then hand tighten it. But we also have to keep in mind we have a little cotter pin hole, so we want to line up our castle nut with that. All right, so once you torque it, back it off just a bit, and then turn it. I like to turn it just till it's hand tight where I can see the cotter pin hole. Drop that down. Got our cotter pin in there. Definitely do a double check, kind of pull on either side, see if you got any play. If you have any wiggle room, redo it. Make sure you get it right. That way you're not ending up having a bearing explode on you later on. And then from there, grab our pliers, and we'll bend up our cotter pin, get that out of the way, so that we can put on our dust cap. Okay, now that that's on, grab our dust cap. We can pop that into place as well. I have a dust cap punch that actually matches up with it, but a lot of the time if you don't have that, what I used to do was just grab a piece of wood, like a 2x4 or something like that, set it across there, so I'm not hammering directly on it, because even though this is metal, it's pretty thin metal, so you can end up damaging it and have a big dent in it, and then it's just not going to look good and maybe not seal up correctly. So I also like to spin it and just kind of double check, making sure I got a nice flush grease cap here, so I don't have any contaminants getting in there. And the final thing we'll do is pop off our little cap here, and we can use our grease gun to put some extra grease in through the hole that's inside of here, push all that grease in, and that'll encapsulate this whole bore hole, so that way we don't have any contaminants getting in there, we don't have water getting in there, and potentially ruining our bearings. And while you're doing this, go ahead and spin the hub too. That'll kind of help throw it around so it kind of works its way all over. My grease gun's pretty low. I can tell it's not really putting too much out too, so I'm gonna go a little bit more than what I said before. And if you do this nice and slow, you can go a little bit more than like that 4 or 5 pumps I talked about. Just really be careful. Keep checking. I kind of learned this from one of the other installers here, Joe. He's sat here and slowly done it and keeps an eye just looking deep down into there, like just past the castle nut, to kind of see when that grease starts to come through. Because sometimes, especially with some heavier capacity hubs, it's a little bit harder to start taking that stuff apart, because there's not always a great replacement out there for some of the older trailers on the market. So sometimes we do have to save the bearings and save the grease seal, so that way we just end up using this and kind of try to push all that grease that's dirty out. Now, honestly, if I was doing that way, I would want to have the grease cap off, so I wouldn't have it all just kind of filling into the grease cap, so it could just kind of fall out onto a paper towel or something like that. But you kind of get the gist of it here. So with this greased up, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to grease the other side. We can place our caps back in, and then all we have to do is reinstall our wheels and make sure that we torque our lug nuts to spec. That's going to do it for our look at and installation of the etrailer self-adjusting trailer brake assemblies here on our 2017 Starcraft Travel Star Galaxy fifth wheel trailer. My name's Kevin, and if you still have some questions about what's going to be the right trailer brake assembly for your trailer's electric brakes, please feel free to reach out to us via our Ask the Experts link, a comment on this video, or a phone call to our customer service department, and we'd be happy to help you out in your journey.